So I was having technical difficulties. Welcome to live chat. Yes. Okay, I was having a couple of I've tried to upload this video like 5 different times already, but there's obviously some technical difficulties that I'm having. So I've decided I'm going to just do it on a live so we have the proof that it's all mine. It might be easier. I was busy talking about my experience living in Hokkaido, Sapporo, Hokkaido in Japan, because my dad was a US diplomat, which is quite a thing, and due to the fact that he was a US diplomat for the US government, which is 100% correct, and I'm a former diplomat's daughter, which is exactly what it is, we ended up living in Hokkaido, Sapporo, Hokkaido as a child. I have some images of me. My grandmother's pictures are on here too. Let's see if I can go back. I did obonodori as a child in Japan. I'll show you pictures of those in a few moments. It's on my phone. Not on my phone. It's on I think it's on my Facebook page. So I'll just transfer that. But here are some images of me in Japan. Here's one. Back in the day, we didn't have computers. So this is an image of me with my tomodachi in Japan. That's me. I think this was somebody's birthday. Maybe my birthday. I don't remember. So I lived in Hokkaido, Sapporo, Hokkaido. I did obonodori, which is Japanese dancing for profession, not a professional. When you're young and you're going through the Japanese culture, it is very important to understand Japanese culture. So my mom said, oh, it's important to take Japanese dancing classes. So I did obonodori, which is where this fan is from, which is like a big deal. And just going back into the subject of Ryuichi Sakamoto, I think he's an incredible composer. There is nothing here that's, he's just an amazing composer. And the piece that people are now beginning to find, I had learnt in 1986 when the movie first came out. I was actually in the movie theater when the movie first landed in the movie theaters in Japan. So for me, it was a big experience, going through that experience and learning how that was a thing. And the song is obviously Adventures, well, the movie is called Adventures of Chatoran. And it's basically based off of, like, it's an adventurous cat who has an exploration and travels with his best friend in the end, which is this pug named Pusket. And it just basically goes into just nature and exploring. Some of it is good, some of it's very, very sad. The music is absolutely incredible. So growing up as a child, I learned to basically, here, my mom was an opera singer. Let me just go back into this. I'm slightly flustered because the past video was not able to upload, which is really frustrating. But I am going to show you some images of me in Japan. So along with these, this is obonodori, that is me. That is me when I'm a little girl. That's my picture, okay? I don't have and then this is my mom. She was an opera singer, okay? So we learned in Japan music education at a young age. Okay, that's me doing obonodori on stage. So I did it, not professionally, but I think I did okay for a little person to recognize the skills of learning Japanese formal dancing. That's what I did as a child. So going back into the essence of Japan, we grew up in Hokkaido, which is known for like all this snow. They have these beautiful snow festivals with these huge ice sculptures that they create during the snow festival season in Hokkaido. And I grew up as a Japanese person. I didn't grow up as a Westerner living in Japan. I grew up as somebody who went to a Japanese school, who went to Yochien and Ichinense and learning Nihongo on like a very, very extensive format, from reading to writing to language to communication. It was like a huge thing for me. So all the things that people might have learned about Japan when not many people who were of foreign backgrounds were living in Japan at the time, because I know I was one of the few, and another one of my friends who I also grew up with, she was also one of the few. I think her family still lives in Japan, Tokyo, I think. We experienced Japan as Japanese kids. We didn't experience it as Western kids, because we had to participate in the cultural essence of living in Japan. So all the things that people would have experienced in the 80s, for somebody who grew up in Japan, who was Japanese, is the stuff that I experienced and grew up with in Japan as well, because that's what it was for me. That was like the thing. Even the music. We did not have production equipment, or if there was, obviously people like Ryuichi Sakamoto would have been a big example of a producer that was in the music industry during the 80s, and then had explored different ways of creating music through production in that format. It was very, very interesting. And my experience with music was both through the dance, because we used very traditional Japanese music for Japanese obonodori, and obviously classically trained musician, because my mom was an opera singer, so we had classical that was kind of embedded in our music education, which was like a thing. But I learned it as, rather than C, D, E, F, G as the West, do, re, mi, fa, so, like solfege would have been the way we were trained in Japan. So I had to readjust myself depending on the country that we lived in for the particular music education. It was just different. It was different in different places. That's just how it was. And I've accepted the fact that there were different ways I had to go about learning things, right? So there's that. And then the music production that I had done was basically taught through the music production that the second time around when we lived in Japan, we lived in Tokyo. So the last year of my high school, I was in Tokyo. Before that, I was in high school in the States at Walt Whitman, and then last year in Japan, Tokyo, Japan, was ASIJ American School in Japan, which was like a private school, but like usually you would wear uniform in like a school. In this case, it was like I guess it was for like the Westerner approach, so we didn't have any uniform. We had public attire, like we would wear like normal clothing. We could dress it up, dress it down. That was like fine for us to do, because that was like what it was like to be in an international school. I was in school, my sister was in, what was her name? Hikaru. If anybody knows Hikaru, whoever lived in Japan, if you know Hikaru Utada, that was the musician we had. She was famous in Japan, hey, so we were in her school, we were there. And yeah, it's just what I'm doing now is I'm busy talking through the stuff that I wasn't able to talk about on my video, because the video didn't upload. I don't know what happened. It was kind of weird. It was really kind of frustrating. So I'm talking about my experience living in Japan, because I didn't live in the States. Like, I lived in the States for like short spurts of my time, but I did not grow up in a music education system. Here, I learned my jazz once I arrived back to the States, but it was all focused on Japanese elements, from when I danced obonodori to the music I listened to on anime, because the anime music was not necessarily the music that the people from the West would hear. It was generally the music that people from a Japanese background would have heard firsthand on like the anime and the cartoons and all those things, like Totoro's music, I'm pretty sure that some of the music that was created during that time frame was also based off of, my personal opinion is that um, Ryuichi Sakamoto actually led the way for the growth of a music during an era. And I only picked up on his music, like the actual composition was his, after I'd watched a couple of other movies. Like I'd watched The Last Emperor, and then what was it called? The Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And those two songs sounded so familiar that I was like, there's a reason why these sound familiar. And then I went back to the song that was of Ryuichi Sakamoto, the first one. I didn't know his name at the time. I just knew the song because it just reminded me of everything that I remembered eclectically as a child. So that was my experience learning the song. I played by ear. I played that song by ear, which was important. And then a lot of the stuff that I produce now is very much more Asian based, because I feel as if, because I grew up there, I grew up in Japan, I feel as if I feel more, look, my husband's Asian too, so I suppose that's probably what it is that we are a family of Asian. My mom's also part Asian. Like she's part Asian. Like she's South African, but there's definitely Asian there. Definitely. Where's the picture? My mom is South African, but our background has, I think, Indian and Indonesian ancestral background. Let's see. So she has, we definitely have Asian in our background. That's my mom. Okay. This was when we lived in Japan, so she has a kimono on, right? So I have Asian ancestral background, so that's also part of the reason why I feel like there's like this whole lineage of going back to the eclectic feel of what you find in, not just in Japan, but like the sounds around you. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the track that I'm still working on it, and I'm not going to play his song, but what I am going to do is I'm going to play the piece I was working on. Where is it? Gosh. Open. I don't want to do this. That's not what I want. Open recent. Yeah, project. Let's first start with this one. This is one that I did before. Okay, let's start with this one so you could see the development of where I am. But I have been doing music production for a long time. I might not be recognized in the industry as people would expect a person to be. I don't necessarily believe that you need to send your tracks over to places like TuneCore or Deezer or CD Baby, because in the end, what they're doing is diluting your capabilities of earning money, and they're taking a huge percentage of what you're trying to even potentially make on your own track that you've produced, and then give you maybe pennies because now you're using their platform to place your music onto their like format, right? So I don't agree with that, and I guess you would call me a little bit underground, which is fine. I don't mind that situation. I know my sister used to call me that. She's like, "You're so underground." I was like, "That's good. That's a positive thing." I would rather be an underground person who understands the quality of music and to have the freedom of expressing myself musically than to be forced into dealing with the question on what the public desires a person to produce music for or as. So I do it differently. I feel as if you're going to produce music, it should be emotional. And during the 80s, there were no, like, I think Sony was just coming to the forefront because Japan, you know, Sony is Japanese, and so is Yamaha. And I have absolute respect for the development and growth in music production through Japan, because it really did start from the core structure of Japan. I think Japan was a very big, impactful experience through music, the music world, right? This is my older piece. But I'll just play it, and then I'm going to play you the second piece, just a little bit. Okay, and I also did live in South Africa. My mom is South African, but because my dad was a U.S. diplomat, which is exactly how it happened for me, I happened to be in a situation where my dad was a U.S. diplomat. And being in a diplomatic family, it's almost like a military family, but a little bit more closer to ambassadorship type of thing. And my dad's job was to work with like celebrity artists and celebrities and the creatives doing and developing projects for those types of things. So I met people like Tom Cruise, and Paul McCartney was at the university. He popped over to the university that I happened to study at in the United States. But all of these type of people, like all these celebrities, were around before cameras. We didn't have the iPhone to film people. Oh, look, there's like a celebrity, like film them now. We didn't have that access. So you would see more celebrities like within areas than you would now. It's a different kind of feel. I mean, it's just different. I wish I met Ryuichi Sakamoto. That was like my biggest dream, was to one day meet Ryuichi Sakamoto, but it never happened. I was like, how am I going to meet this genius guy? But I never did. It was very unfortunate. But I did, however, when I lived in Tokyo, for the last bit of my high school, I apprenticed for a designer whose name is Jürgen Lell. Jürgen Lell, I believe, is still around. He is a German designer that moved from Germany to Japan. And what had then happened is, I think through my dad's office, I actually wanted to work for Vogue. I was like, I want to work for Vogue. Can somebody get me into Vogue? I want to be behind the scene. I love photography. I'd like to see how it works. So I got in. I got a chance to experience Vogue Tokyo, but because I wasn't Japanese, they didn't give me a position working there. So it was like really disheartening. But in the end, I ended up working or apprenticing for Jürgen Lell, who was a designer whose best friend happened to be Issey Miyake. So it's like full circle. Like I've been dealing with the music industry. I've been dealing with the fashion industry. It's like what it was. And then I was studying the arts for the purpose of understanding painting structure, drawings, designs, concepts, graphic design, all the things that you need for developing growth. I'm sort of glad that I did all those things, because now I'm able to do it without asking somebody to. I don't need to hire anybody to do it for me. I do it for myself, because this is the type of thing that I like studied, right? So I was trained formally in Japan. So the way I think is not like casual American artist creating music. It's like I have technical understanding of the formalities of living in Tokyo. I even spoke Nihongo for like years and years and years, like long time. Okay, so let me just play the next piece. Open recent. Is this it? Close. And this is the new track I'm busy working on. It is, I think there's a lot to be done. Somebody had mentioned to incorporate some violin, which I will. But the violin will come in when I think I need to take out some pieces here. It's too busy right now, right? Too busy. Yeah. but I still have the same feel. Yeah. So tomorrow I'll go back and rework those sections. So for me it is a big deal. It is a big deal. The equipment that I have is not new, okay? I have collected this stuff in about like 10. I have 2 keyboards here. I actually have 3. And then a mic, a few mics, the desktop, obviously. I have a few laptops. And then the keyboards are relatively old. But the way to maintain a keyboard is to take care of it. And I think not enough people take care of their equipment so that the equipment lasts a long time. And I think that is ingrained in me. Like, I've learned to take care and maintain technology through my studies in Japan. I do think that had a really huge role in how I kind of deal with technology in a very different way. I don't just toss something out because it doesn't work. I make sure that it stays working, but by keeping it maintained, you manage to keep the piece or the equipment tidy and clean. It does fall into, just like these. These are old. These are from the 80s. I think they might even be older. I don't know. What does it say? I can't read. I wouldn't even be able to tell you what it says. But these are old. These I had when I was, this is the one, I think this is the one piece I actually have. My mom brought it back to show me. She's like, here, your fan. This is my Bonodori fan. So when I lived in Japan, I did Japanese dance, Obonodori. And with Obonodori, you wear kimono, and then you have the fan, and then you do the little Japanese, and you dance to Japanese traditional music, right? So that's very, very traditional, very, very formal training. So I come from a formal trained background. My dad was a diplomat for the U.S. Embassy. He worked with people who were celebrity stature type of characters. And I just happened to be intermingled in this whole mix of things because of his job and career. So my lifestyle now does not reflect diplomatic lifestyle. And I don't think I want it to be reflected of that. I just know that my formal training comes from that family background, from, for instance, having coffee in my parents' house in South Africa with Paul Simon, which was absolute craziness. I was like, how is he possibly in? I didn't know who it was, so I wouldn't have known who I was sitting next to, but my dad played a role in the performance at, I think that was in the 80s as well. So once we left Japan, I think I was 7. Left Japan, we moved to Pretoria, which is in South Africa, just out of Johannesburg. And then from there, he also had dealt with other people. So this is the first time I've left my parents' house. I didn't want to affiliate myself with the people that he knew, only because I didn't want to be like, oh, your dad's name is Brooke Spector, and this is what your dad does, and this is his history. And I'm just like, I want people to see me for who I am, right? This is the first time I've had to, or I've experienced allowing people to see who I am for who I am, rather than my family background, which was a distraction because I think on many occasions people got one perspective and didn't see my side of things. And I feel like this is the first time I'm able to actually speak up and say something about it. It was great experience, but I also feel as if it came with a lot of responsibilities on how people perceive you. So I was a little rebellious. I had my moments, make no mistake. I had my moments. I did not always agree with what was going on. And so therefore I did my own thing. but I always maintained my music. I knew that if I did not do my music, and I've been doing music for the past 40 something years, right? Uh, and I wasn't gaining it for success or fame. It would be nice, but I would like to do it, if I were to do it that way, it would be nice to do it on my own terms. I wouldn't want it to be coming from somebody like my sister did that. My sister ended up being in the music industry because my dad gave the go-ahead, and now she works with all these people. And I'm like, I didn't want to do that. That was not my goal was to be my own, produce myself, my own individual person doing my own stuff, having control of everything. Because I have had experiences, say for instance, I did modeling when I was younger. And when I modeled, not all the time did I ever get paid or get the photographs. So in the end, I was left with nothing. So I basically felt as if I was being taken advantage of and not being able to speak my mind and not having the portfolio. So I created my own portfolio. I took my own photographs. Thank goodness I studied photography, and I understood how to use a tripod, because back in the 90s, late 90s, 2000s, we did not have manual cameras. Digital cameras were just coming out, and we certainly did not have the iPhone. So there were many, many, many things that I was experiencing. And as a female, specifically a female, during that time, who perhaps looked slender and younger than I look right now, I had problems. I did have problems. There were issues in the music industry, and I didn't want to be put in a situation that I felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to be the next victim to whatever situation was going to happen. So I took my stand and I said, I'm going to learn this stuff on my own, and I learned how to produce all these things by myself. And thank goodness for a great partner who, my husband is really, really awesome. He actually, he might be the next other person who really understands music production without it being too quirky. He actually was a DJ in New York. He did DJing in New York in 2000. No, when was it? Also in the 90s. So when he was doing music production in the 90s, he was using the traditional way of creating mixes through vinyls, right? They didn't have the new stuff, and you couldn't just press a button. You actually had to have a little bit of skill to understand how to mix those songs together and understand what timing was about and understand what a key signature changes and how the songs would mix together. Now that takes a little bit of skill. I think now you just put it in on the turntables, and then you can adjust the volumes with the buttons and the knobs on there. A little bit less technical than it used to be, right? So the format of production, though it has come a long way, I do believe that the traditional formats of how the development of music production came about was a big factor of how music was and still is produced. I don't necessarily listen to a lot of rap. It's not my thing. I listen to a little bit more electronic music. And I was very fascinated when I found out that Ryuichi Sakamoto was this huge electronic, besides pianist. I mean, gosh, pianist on top of that, and electronic master. It was amazing. So every time I think of a song, or every time I try to analyze a piece, I always go back to his pieces and how he constructed them. And I might not necessarily always have the music, but I do play by ear as well, besides reading music, and I was able to pick up the sounds, right? Yeah, so that's my history. I don't think, I don't like to talk about my personal family background, because then people make assumptions. They make assumptions, and I don't like people making assumptions. I like to try to keep I mean, I do have to, in the end, eventually explain how I managed to get to different countries, and it was because of what my dad did and his job and his choice in a career. Political science, that was his thing. Not necessarily mine, because I don't necessarily always agree with what politics deals with. That is not my field. My field is always, it's anything to do with music, art, and fashion. I can do. That's my thing. My dad chose the other path. I did not. My mom chose music. My sister chose music. I chose something in between, like a conglomeration of a variety of skills, a variety of things. That was just my choice, right? So that is my, and then tomorrow I'll go into the music production, right? I just need to slow this down. There are some major glitches I need to work on here. Okay. And then it doesn't just happen overnight. It's not like I miraculously snapped my fingers and voila, the piece like happened. It's because I've taken many, many years to understand how to put together a piece. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's an absolute fantastic, masterful masterpiece yet. But for what I'm doing, and I'm not putting it out there as a musician sending it over to, even though I have known people in Sony in the past. I don't necessarily go into that discussion. It's just not, I am a little bit more, I stand my ground, and I think people in the music industry are not always as standing ground. You really, it's not, I don't climb the ladder to create a gain. I don't follow the pack like people expect people to follow. I create my own scene and my own vision and my own approach to things because I stand for something, and I believe women's rights do matter, and I feel as if a guy can do it, a female can do it. That applies for photography. I can do that myself. That applies for music production. That applies for painting, and the whole world back in, I don't know what, they were always focused on the males being more qualified in the field than the females. But I think times have changed, things have flipped a little bit, and we as women are able to stand on our feet to say, listen, we don't need a guy to produce our own music. We can, or maybe some do still, like my sister does. I even asked her, I was like, why aren't you like setting up your own little studio space? She's like, yeah, but I go into a producer's house and we produce the music. And I was like, you're spending like all your money going into a producer's house, whereas you could save your money and invest it in supplies. Why are you spending so much money paying for another producer to edit and modify something you can easily do? So we had two different perspectives. My sister wants to go into the studios, and she wants to work with the producers, and she wants to be like the singer of the album, and she wants to have, at the same time, I think it's, you know, her growth in music production, not music production, in composing. I had to finally stand ground and say, listen, stop singing commercial stuff. Learn to create your own music. So it began with showing her, like I'm older than her, but it began showing her that she can do it on her own. She doesn't need somebody to do it for her. She can just figure it out and learn how to do it. So music production has, for me, inevitably been part of, first of all, my protection. I felt like if I produce my own music, I don't have to go to other people's houses and then put myself in jeopardy of all sorts of things that I don't need to go through. I've already had enough of that in my life. I've already gone through plenty to know better not to do that. So it's always better, as at least for me, to be able to set it up, to be able to buy my own equipment, which is what I did. This is like years of, and it's not even a full-on studio. This is just a little bit of equipment. It's not a lot. It's not a ton, but it's working, functioning supplies that took me to, I had to teach in a music, not just a music school, but a music store to afford the stuff. My parents did not buy this for me. This is all my hard work. I don't live with my parents. They live in South Africa. And that's the other thing, is that because they were diplomats and they were family, my parents were involved with governments. It was like this whole, like it's like people assume that you have the money to do whatever you want. And in my case, I was trying to prove to them, don't look at me and then think that I'm my parents, like, whatevers. I see life on a very different spectrum. I don't see it as what they're living. I see it as a struggling artist, okay, who's trying to get wraps on her life, not trying to be dependent on her parents, always made her own money, never asked them for anything. It was just, I even moved out of my parents' house at the age of 15 at one point because I was tired of being affiliated with my dad's job. It just wasn't what I wanted to be evaluated as. Even though people say, oh, it's such a big deal. I was like, it might be a big deal to you because you haven't experienced it, but if you have experienced it and lived your life in a situation having to deal with the restraints and the restrictions of a political lifestyle, which is what my dad, that's how his life was. It has become a bit of a thing for me. So that's why I switched over to the arts. And I do arts for that reason, is that this has become like part of my, as you would say, defiance. I'm demonstrating my resilience for disagreeing with politics by agreeing to be more grounded within my music and the arts. But I still understand that side of the world. Make no mistake. That's not like, that is never an issue for me, right? Never an issue. So it becomes part of like the whole process. Oh no, man. Japan. Which one am I going to do here? Oh, let me play you this one. This is another one. I think, was I inspired by, I just always go back to my Japanese roots. I mean, I might not be Japanese physically, but I definitely have lived there. And I think we still have friends there, right? So technically, if I really wanted to go back and visit, I probably could just stay at a friend's house, but it's not really file open. Stardom. Where's this? Okay, I haven't heard this in a while. I don't even know what it sounds like at this stage. But yeah, so that's where I am right now. Sorry if I look like I'm talking to myself. It's because the video that I had planned on landscape did not upload. So now plan B is to go live on here, even though I'm supposed to go live tomorrow. This is my plan B solution. Conclusion is, if it's not working, go live. Like this is one way to reassure that this is like filmed and recorded and it's downloadable. I tried the other way and obviously it failed today. So maybe I just do this way like this now. So we'll see. Yeah. So these are not necessarily, I think a lot of people, I don't have anybody helping me with this stuff, make no mistake. This is everything I've learned and figured out on my own, okay? I think my EQing, when it comes down to recording all of them together, like if I were to put it on a CD or a disc, oh, we don't have discs anymore. But I can see the developments in my own, like, music and growth. Christmas in Japan. These are all my mom's. Wait, let's see. My grandmother lived there in Japan with us too. It was pretty awesome. If you've ever been to Japan, you can, these are pictures, right? This is the, when you make the mochi rice, when you make the mochi and you do like the pounding, there's a ceremony. I think it might have been just after or just before the Cherry Blossom Festival. I cannot remember. But these were memories. I even remember all the short stories that I learned in Japan, right? So this is like a huge thing for me. That's my dad. Yeah, that's my dad. This is his office. I think that's his office in Hokkaido. I know I'm in one of these images here. Let me just see. Oh, yeah. This is in Japan. I'm wearing the like traditional, I can't remember the name of it. Yukata? Is it a yukata? I can't remember if it's a yukata, but yeah. And my grandmother came to visit us and live with us for like a year or so. There you go. You can only get these images in Japan. I mean, who has a yukata at that age? That was me. Watashi. Yeah, this was in Japan as well, I think. Me as a little one, right? I think that was my birthday. So this is all the evidence that I lived in Japan. I did not live in the States. I mean, I did, but I didn't, right? Okay. Cancel, install software. I don't know if I need to do that right now. Okay, we'll cancel that for now. We'll close, we'll just save and close. Okay, so all my songs have led up to, no, I don't need that. Have led up to where I am right now with my music. And for me, it's not, oh, goodness gracious, what am I doing? Open recents. Just go back to solar eclipse. I haven't heard this in a while. Let's see if that sounds any good. So I'm not inspired by American music. I am inspired by Asian music, which is just something, and maybe a little bit of South African music because I also grew up with that. Yeah. Yeah, I don't, and I do feel as if I appreciate more of the 80s music than the music that we have now. I don't know. I definitely lived in the 80s. So, yeah. Okay, so these are all the songs that I'm gonna close this for now. I compose, like, I know they have schools and places that you can get like education on music production, but that is not where I learned it. I learned it through merely understanding quality. Like, the first composer I was inspired and infatuated with his compositions was the Japanese producer. I mean, I thought it was just piano, and then I found out that he did production, and I just thought, my goodness, this is amazing. And then, obviously, the designer in Japan, whose friend was Issey Miyake, is one of my favorite designers, and both him and the producer died within the same week. So I was very disappointed with what had happened. It didn't have to be at the same time. I was like, why did it have to be the case? So I came from a background that had high people in the circles, blah, 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 dealing with those kind of situations. And then there was me that just didn't feel like everything made sense. So I kind of stepped away from that world and kind of developed my own kind of vision. I do miss some of the things that happen within that world, like hanging out in nice fancy houses and going to operas, which my mom would always like enforce, like you have, and then the ballets. But I don't do any of that stuff anymore. However, I do have the understanding, the appreciation for the higher living, if you want to put it that way. So that is my, that is the core of where my music comes from, is that it's definitely not an American driven production, oh, I want to be a producer, but more of what can you do with technology and how can you produce it on your own to make it. I mean, look, I'm sure eventually Reiichi Sakamoto actually did have people working with him and producing stuff, but most of the time, I'm sure he had his own little studio in his house, and he produced alone, working on music, and then when he was ready, he showed it to the world, and that's basically how it's done. Now I'm kind of just like displaying what I'm doing here, but times have changed, right? Things are different. I don't see it as staying in one lane for the music, or I don't see it as somebody who had done a little bit of modeling and then assumed that the photographer is the key to the answer. Maybe it was because I needed to learn how to take my own photographs because I was tired of being treated like what they treat models as. This was many years ago. I mean, I'm older now, so I don't look the way I used to look. This was little tiny me. I was very, very thin. I was like so thin. Even my husband was like, "You're so thin." I was like, "What are you talking about? That I'm not thin. I'm just," I mean, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I was thin back then. My cousin and me. That's me in the left over here, right? And I don't have the pictures of when I was having a ball in Japan when I was the last year of I think the high school, right? I was just kind of, these are old pictures. I think you find a lot more of the pictures of me are on, oh, that was at the Corcoran, are on my Facebook page, right? So this is before social media. We had things like photographs, right? This was the Corcoran. When I studied at the Corcoran, I was doing some sort of sculptural performance. I don't know what exactly it was. So that's little old me. I had my little extensions. So I've lived my life. I've had many, many lives, and I didn't just grow up in my parents' backyard. I explored and experienced the world through the eyes of a diplomat's daughter. So that is my story and my experience, and I'm finally opening up about it because I don't like people guessing and assuming certain things, but that is in fact how it was for me as somebody who predominantly lived in an environment that we were surrounded by like people of high standing stature, whatever's. The only person I didn't meet, I really do wish I met him, was the producer. I really do wish that was the case, but it never happened. I was like, I wouldn't, yeah. It's unfortunate, it's unfortunate. So, arigatou gozaimashita. Matashita sayonara. And then I will be back tomorrow, ashita, for maybe just sit down and do a little production. But this video has taken me 3 tries just to get some footage down because the one that was on my phone obviously was not uploading. Then I had issues with my iPad. And the whole day has been a complete disaster. So I was like, you know what? I am going to just go live because this is now becoming a drastic problem today. Sorry. And arigatou gozaimashita. So the music that you hear, just going back to that, is it's more refined. It's more because I studied all those years in music. It's not because I just decided one day I'm going to snap my fingers and I'm going to create a song. It's because I built up to learning the music theory. I built up to understanding what a high versioned sound possibly is for composition. Like I say, I don't do the rap. I do like beats, but beats don't have to just be for rap, okay? That's the misconception, is that beat making is for a global type of music, and I'm definitely more global than just local. So just because I live in the States doesn't mean to say that I lived all my life in the States. It's just part of me. This is just a little bit of me. Okay, thank you. ありがとうございました。